Coming up in March this year, we have got a 4-part art series. It's an art series with a difference. We're not actually going to be painting paintings, we're actually going to be studying and diving into the world of journaling. What is journaling? It's a way of looking at something, it's a way of detailing nature in an illustrative way, but with your notes. It's a way of showing people how you think rather than how you see. And I think it actually complements really well artists sketching, so plein air paintings, but also to complement that with a journaling technique could be a fascinating way of keeping a record of where you visit, what you see, how you think, and something that you could keep for many, many years to come. Obviously, we do a lot of art tutorials, and a few years back we visited professional artists around the world, and asked them to show their sketchbooks, and they're obviously very visual sketchbooks. You know, they're plein air paintings, taking a visual record of what they're looking at that moment in time. And I actually felt, and the reason I was excited to do this series in March, is that the journaling is a really great complementary skill set where you can record the visual stuff, but the journaling is almost a record of how you think about things. Am I barking up the right tree there?
No, this is exactly right. Because what I think is actually the thing that I'm going to have to share that is the most, I think will be the most useful, is that there are these different strategies of thinking and engaging with a place. And art, the visual representation of that is one way of doing that. And if you intentionally couple that with writing things and counting things and measuring things and asking questions, and there's all these mental processes that are part of being awake and being alive, and we can bring those to the table in our journal, and it makes every journal page that you do so much more interesting and so much more fun.
It was a fascinating and eye-opening experience for me, to be honest, when we did that shorter class some years ago, because I thought, what a great way to, I think we were just looking at a pepper or something like that.
Yes,
and
that's right.
you know, and it was just really kind of the way you describe things, and the way, and you just take it for granted. You know, I'm there on the chopping board chopping the pepper up, and you know, and it was just, all of a sudden it was like, oh my god, I've never really studied this thing.
You know, that's the thing that I am surprised by again and again and again, that there are all these phenomena around me that I just take for granted, that I think I know what it looks like.
Yeah,
I think I know this thing. I've seen it a million times before.
Yeah.
But if I've never really deeply observed it, then I've never really deeply observed it. But I have the subjective feeling of, I know this thing.
Yes.
But I don't.
And could you relate it, because I mean, we do a lot of landscapes, for example, and so there we are looking at a pepper, but if you're looking at a landscape, could you use a lot of those same skills in?
Oh, it's all exactly the same thing. Absolutely. Yeah. So if let's just say that you're sitting in a cafe, and you're visiting a foreign city, and you're looking across the street, and in your little notebook you're making a little sketch of what you see. That's wonderful. That process will help you be present in that moment. That process will help you be able to remember that more vividly. But you're only using part of your toolkit to really engage in that experience. If you, you're in Istanbul, and you notice that the loudspeaker is playing the Bee Gees, and this, strikes your funny bone. You make a little note in the corner that that Staying Alive is playing over the loudspeaker. That's not something that, or that the smell in the air
smells
is this. It's this combination of spices and diesel. And whatever it is, there are things that we can't capture in those sketches. And if we, and so there's two things. There's things that you can't capture in the sketch because, let's say it's a smell. But even if you were recording things about this street scene, there are some things that when you process them through words, when you process things through words, it uses a different part of your brain than when you process things through visual imagery. And so when you're intentionally doing both of those things and putting them together on the page, you're allowing more of your brain to come in and play with this experience rather than just your visual cortex. And then you can also, part of the nature journaling practice is that we're trying to get ourselves curious about this experience in this place. We're deliberately asking questions of the world around us. And so when I'm intentionally wondering about things, I'll notice things and get curious about things that I otherwise would not have done. So part of the practice is, how can I be deliberately curious? And then we give you some resources to, when you get curious about something, how do you follow up on that? You're wondering about this. Sure, everybody can do a Google search. But most of the subtle, nuanced questions of the world, they're not actually out there on some web page waiting for you to go to it, because you may be the first person who's asked this question. But you get some tools to be able to begin to investigate these things on your own. And in addition to that, we bring in this idea of, where have I been here before? Right? What is this similar to that's in my experience? How is it different than everything that I've experienced before? So how is it similar to, how is it different than, what does this remind me of? And you can apply that to that street scene. You can apply that to the landscape in front of you. You can apply that to looking at a pepper from your garden, or that you've brought home from a grocery store. Before you chop it up, you make some journal notes about it, and you've just learned something deep and rich and interesting about the biological world around you, just in your dinner time preparation. And so I think of nature journaling as a toolkit for your brain to engage with the world in a richer, more joyful, and nuanced way. So we're intentionally using visual imagery. We're drawing pictures. We're drawing a lot. We're also using words to record our experiences and our thoughts and our feelings. And we're also quantifying things. So words, pictures, and numbers are the three kind of key pieces of the vocabulary that you can put onto your nature journaling page.
Yes.
And
I think that's the big difference here, is that because when you look at a lot of the artists' sketchbooks, they don't really use words at all. They don't. It is just paintings, pictures. It's the visual representation. So this is an element where we're basically saying, don't be scared to add words, smells, right, sounds. Record the moment, record the feelings that you've had,
absolutely,
as well as
absolutely. So whether you're doing urban sketching, whether you're doing landscape painting and drawing, whether you're doing a botanical study, all this same toolkit can come in and apply there.
Yeah. And so the four classes that we've devised and worked with you on. So the first one, you've mentioned it already, the toolkit, is looking at the essential tools. And so this might actually be the actual hardware, but also the way of thinking, the tools in your brain about how you should look at something. So that's our first one. And then that's followed up by drawing in the field. So what sort of elements, how you should approach the drawing of a study, I guess. Is that right?
And so part of that is learning how to take advantage of what nature gives you. You know, for instance, if you go out today, I'm going to do some careful studies of birds. Guarantee you, there won't be a bird in sight, right? For some, like somehow they can tell that like you're coming out with your binoculars, it's bird time, and then they're gone. But you know, how do you how do you get started? How do you when the bird does show up um, and starts to be cooperative? How do you take advantage of that? The critter's moving,
Yeah.
and how do we play with live things that are bopping around? How do we play with um, the logistics of kind of working in the field? How can you take all these different sorts of elements and start to mix them together on your page? So what I like to do is to the page is going to reflect my experience and where my curiosity was pulled on any particular day. And the it sort of tells a story of my journey and my focus. And you can go into the same spot on 20 different occasions and have completely different experiences with your journaling. Part of the logistics is the tools that you bring with you, like the physical tools. I'm going to bring this kind of brush, and I'm going to bring this kind of pencil, and I'm going to carry them in this sort of a bag. Those sorts of mechanics help get a lot of the fuss out of the way.
Yeah.
But then there's also some mechanics of just, depending on the phenomenon that you're exploring, the way you want to go about this, you want to have some strategies. Because if you're just thinking, I'm going to go out, I'm going to do bird portraiture today, then you're sitting there thinking like, these are moving, this is not working for me. I think it's going to, I'm instead just going to go home and look at photographs. But what can you do to really take advantage of what those critters are giving you?
Yeah.
Having a bigger toolkit of nature journaling strategies makes a big difference.
And on the third class, in fact, just before we go on to that, a comment from Sandra just now. She said, when one follows Jack, nothing looks the same as before. It's an intense learning experience. Your visual perception is changed forever. And so that was a lovely comment. And I'd echo that, because it was a bit of an epiphany for me when we did that pepper some time ago. So that was lovely. But part three, the third class, we're doing exploring how to deep dive, I guess, is the going down the rabbit holes you described it as, but looking at something and really going as far as you can with that subject.
Well, yeah, I think this sort of ties into what maybe was it Sandra?
Yes, Sandra
was talking about. Yeah, that what you want to for me, where this becomes the most fun is when your curiosity and your wonder just gets sucked down some unexpected rabbit hole. Yeah. And there you are, and time completely melts away, and you find yourself just absolutely wrapped around the axle of looking at how these little pine cones are being nibbled by squirrels. And it is not the actual individual subject that is the most important thing, because anything around you can be fascinating if we learn how to look at it the right way. And if so how can I get my brain to just to go spelunking into whatever mystery is in front of me, and having some strategies of, depending on the type of question that I'm asking, it's going to change the way that I investigate it. Because I think of part of what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at how to when we have a little mini mystery in front of us, if I can classify that question, there are sort of three different types of questions. And if I can figure out which category this is in, each one of those has a different style or a different strategy of how you unpack that question. And that will kind of help you fall in love with whatever little phenomenon is in front of you.
Mm.
The if you so kind of a part of what we'll be doing is kind of as a scientist thinking a little bit about how is it that we know stuff, right? We'll be looking at kind of our human epistemology, and there are three different strategies. And so if you can figure out which one of those strategies is appropriate for whatever phenomenon you're following that day, the way that you do it is that you've then got this little roadmap of like, okay, and then here's how I'm going to investigate this. And that's really, really useful, because then having that little roadmap, just this basic 1, 2, 3 strategy, then helps you be able to figure out what your next steps are. And those will then start to pull your curiosity on and on and on. And the more curious you get about something, the more fun and wonderful and amazing and wild and fantastic this world is. When you get yourself really curious about some phenomenon in front of you, it's hard to rip yourself away from that. And so you want to kind of prime yourself for what I call, deep geeking out. So.
Yeah, let's all geek out. Let's all geek out together. I think this is going to be a really great workshop, and I'd highly, highly recommend, even if you've not thought about it before, giving something like this a go. Even if you don't want to commit yourself to the entire series, just do the first class, or just once you. And you may already feel that you make notes on things and do, but Jack does he has a certain approach to things. He's written a load of books about it. Because you are known as the journaling naturalist, I guess.
I'm one of them. I'm tapped. There's a growing community of people who are really excited about keeping nature journals, and there's this conversation between all these different people who are doing it. Like, I'm doing this way, and I'm doing this way. And something that is really beautiful about this community is that there's kind of an open source ethic. So if I like what you're doing, right, I start using some of those strategies and approaches. And because these are all just sort of mental strategies, it doesn't mean that you're not mimicking somebody else. You're using that strategy, putting it through your eyes, and then whatever you see will be different because it's being processed through your electric meat. But then you have this new lens. You put this different lens in front of your eye. And now the whole world seems different because you're looking at this thing through this slightly different angle. And so something that I love doing is I'm constantly in contact with other people in the nature journaling community. Like, what are you doing? Like, oh, that's a fun idea. I'm going to try that lens. And so it's given me lots of different lenses to look at things through. And then I can share those with other people. And so I think a big part of my strategy is just being like a good nature journaling idea scavenger. Yes. And I'm constantly kind of looking around like, oh, I think I'm gonna eat that. Ooh, that's great. And so that's so I'll be sharing lots of ideas. Some of them are ones that I may have come up with, but I find that on a lot of the things that I think I've invented, actually people have been doing for a long time. And a bunch of them are things that I know that, like, I got this one from Roseanne or whoever it is. And those strategies, they help us think and they help us have fun on paper.
Definitely. Well, it will not be short of fun and
That's
also true. Enthusiasm and energy, because you've got oodles of that, Jack. So can't wait. And the final class, we kind of touched on it, but the final class, we're just going to bring everything together that we've been covering in the previous 3. So that's going to be a really nice class just to round everything off, cover all that, reinforce the things that we've covered into a full sort of journaling class on something.
Yeah, well, that's right. So the strategy is we'll bring in some phenomenon and then kind of look at what does the flow look like? How can you kind of get in flow with, let's say we bring in a pepper, or well, what I'll do is I will, before the class, just go for a little stroll, and I will be looking for something that, like, I'm not going to know ahead of time like how this class is going. I want to use this to teach this and this and this and this and this.
Yes.
What I do is I go out and I find something that makes me go like, oh, that's neat. Check. Whoa. So I'm going out and I find, like, I'm looking for this little kind of sense of surprise in my reaction to seeing some little phenomenon around me. And then I bring that in, and then we start kind of looking at it more and looking at it more. And invariably, it is going to erupt into all these treasures and surprises. And so we're going to be using that as sort of this model for journaling flow and how we can put these pieces together. And so that every time you go out and you have your little notebook in your hand, there's an authentic discovery and sort of moments of wonder that you're going to have with not just what is in. I don't want you to think like you need what is in Jack's neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
In order to do this. No, you can do this with whatever it is that is out there. All you need is something that makes you go, And then once you've got that hook, how do we use that just to open up the infinite?
Yes. Well, I'm hoping that this series will, I guess the word for this is almost a paradigm. A bit will give you a bit of a paradigm shift of looking at something in a slightly different way, and something that you can take with you when you go on your travels, like we all can now, with all our art trips, and can look at these things in a different way and annotate them and make notes. And it's not just writing the same. Jack does different size words he presents the page in a certain way, and he'll talk you through that as well. As I said, if you want to just purchase the first one and give it a go, you can do. But if you purchase all 4, the whole series, you get a 25% discount. The link is in the description. You can go to our website and check it out on the upcoming events. But I really can't wait. It's going to be a load of fun. It's going to be really great. So thank you very much for joining me today to discuss what we're going to be covering, Jack. It's been really lovely. And really, really looking forward. Rock on March.
It's going to be a good March. It's going to be a good March, and I agree with you. I'm looking forward to kind of playing with the shopkeep community here. It's a really, really fun toolkit. Yeah, the whole idea is that it's not. And also, there was one other kind of perk about this. If you've ever been sketching or journaling sometime and you go like, I don't like this drawing, and you feel that kind of, I don't like the way my drawing is turning out. Something that we find is that when there's, on any page, when there's a whole bunch of just interesting stuff going on, the nature journaling page becomes inherently interesting and wonderful and beautiful, independent of whether there's a pretty picture on it. Because it's this record of your discoveries and thinking, and it becomes absolutely fascinating. And you'll find that if you take this nature journaling approach, that you'll get positive reinforcement from all these pages, independent of whether there's a pretty picture there or not, because there's just so much curiosity and wonder and fun going on. And then that gets you journaling a lot more, which gets you drawing a lot more. And the consequence of that is your drawings get better because you're drawing a lot more. So it's a great way to trick yourself into drawing a lot more. The goal of this is not to make pretty drawings, but a little sidecar that comes along with it is, because you're practicing it, you're going to get better and better and better at your drawings, but you get to do it in a painless way, because then you get like, wow, that was an interesting page. What a great discovery. Instead of every time you're looking at it, you're like, I don't like the way the stem looked on that flower, right? It's a really interesting way to kind of move the goalpost in your brain in a way that gets you making more pictures. And the result is that you make better pictures, but without the goal of making better pictures.
Brilliant. Mind-blowing. Right. Can't wait. Thank you so much for joining me, and hope you can join us in March. Thanks. Take care.
Take care, everybody.